You mentioned how people like to separate failure and success. From a growth perspective, I'd like for you to just maybe elaborate on a time when you've had maybe one of your greatest successes and maybe a failure, and what were some of your key takeaways from those situations?
Well, what I've discovered is that we learn most of our lessons from our failures, not from our successes. I have what I call learning lunches. Your people are going to love this. For about 40 years, every month, Jared, I take somebody to lunch, bigger, better, faster, smarter than me.
Right.
I buy the lunch. I don't even eat lunch. I got 7 questions I want to ask them, and one of the 7 questions is, "What's the greatest lesson you ever learned in life?" Now, when I ask that, I've asked that question hundreds of times. Every time, different backgrounds, different people, different times. Every time, there's one thing they're going to have in common, and it is the greatest lesson they learned in their life, Jared, was out of a difficult time in their life. I've never had one person say, "Let me tell you, I was really successful and this is what I learned." It's like, oops, this was not good.
Right.
So we are much more teachable in our failures than we are. I mean, we're too busy celebrating our successes. So what I would say to all is the fact that it's out of the difficult times that wisdom is a result of learning something during a time when you were greatly pressed. So I tell people all the time. In fact, I think an interesting conversation 2 years from now is talk to me about COVID-19, because I can tell you during this crisis, people are either getting better or they're getting worse. Because crisis that does not leave us the same. It moves us. So it's either going to move us upstream or it's going to move us downstream. That's fact.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. You know, the real estate profession, just like most sales professions or any really, I mean, it's surrounded and centered around relationships, obviously. I'm sure a lot of your success could be contributed to how well you've been able to develop, maintain,
Sure.
and manage relationships.
Sure.
So, how do you stay connected and grow your relationships?
Well, I expose myself to new spheres of influence, and I was having a conversation, and in a moment I'll think of his name because everybody would know him because he's a terrific author. But I was in Las Vegas, and the two of us were doing a conference together, and he was talking to me about who luck. And he said, "John," he said, "the greatest luck you can ever have is who luck, who you meet." And he then went on to talk about you need to be intentional in that. So when I talked about my learning lunches and my 7 questions, one of the questions I ask in that learning lunch is, "Who do you know that I should know?" It's a great question. That question has led me to all kinds of interesting meetings and relationships that have developed out of it. Who do you know that I should know? And it's just really true that if we can expand ourselves wide, know more people, and if we can expand ourselves up, know more important people, widen up, think wide enough, then all of a sudden there's all kind of contacts and possibilities that begin to come our way that would not come our way if we did not move out of that comfort zone and forge and form intentionally new relationships.
Right. And I think I look at my leadership journey, and that's exactly what my mentors have done for me my
Yeah,
whole career.
absolutely.
And it's not asking things of people, but it's just introducing me and
Oh,
helping
yes.
me develop and build those
That's a good point. I
relationships.
love that. Not asking things of people. Help me to know them, build the relationships, and see where it takes me. I like
Absolutely.
that.
What is one area of development that maybe we should focus on that will net the most significant return or self improvement?
Well, I say to people all the time, Jared, you better make sure every day you're investing in yourself. You know, we all like to watch our investments and our money to see if it's growing and are we getting the ROI that we want to have in it. But it's very interesting to me that so many people don't realize the importance of investing in themselves. And I tell people all the time, I'm not going to bet on you till you bet on you. Now, the moment you bet on you and say, okay, I'm going to invest in me. Now, I'll probably come across and invest in you too, but you got to go first. You got to show me that you want to grow. You want to show me that you want to improve. And so my life was changed again when my mentor said, growth's not automatic. The moment he said that to me, I became intentional in my growth. And that means I'm consistently reading the right books. I'm consistently listening to the right podcast. I'm consistently going to the right conferences like your association conference here and hanging around the right people. And I'm very intentional in all those things. And when I learned what resources did for me in personal growth, Jared, I determined that I was going to develop resources for others. Because when I started off, I didn't know where to go, and there weren't an abundance of resources. And so it was very hard for me to find something that worked. And so I said, well, you know what? I'm going to provide what I would call personal growth resources that help people get better. And so that's what we've been doing for millions and millions of people. We're literally saying, here, this digital product will help you, this book will help you. And we really are in the investing and adding value to people business.
So it all comes around full circle, because you talk about personal growth and mindset, building and developing daily habits, and working on yourself, whether it be from a health perspective,
totally,
to a mental perspective, to a career progression and growth perspective. So it all comes around full circle together.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Outstanding.
Yeah. How to be a real, and take that word to real, REAL, success, and share with you 4 things that if you would improve in these 4 areas, just like I try to improve these 4 areas in my own life, honestly, your business will improve. It really will. Let me give you the background of this teaching just for a moment. When I was in my 20s, I had a mentor, Les Parrott, who had written 5 books. I had not written any books. I was not an author. In fact, I didn't have any desire to be an author. If you'd come up and ask me if I ever wanted to write a book, I'd say, well, I like to read them, but I don't particularly care to write them. But we're having lunch one day, and my mentor, Les, is talking to me about his latest book. He'd written 5 of them. And I asked him, I said, Les, why do you write books? And he looked at me that day and said, John, I write books to add value to people and influence people that I will never meet. And the moment that he said that to me, within my heart, I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to add value to people. I want to reach people and help people that I'll never maybe ever personally meet in my life. And that was the catalyst for me becoming a writer. For the next 18 months, I asked myself a very, I think, important question if you're going to write a book, and that is, what should I write about? And I came to the conclusion that if I really wanted to add value to people, that I needed to ask myself and ask others, what is it that is so important in their life that would help them to be more valuable and more successful? And for the next 18 months, I asked questions, I read, I thought, I wrote down my thoughts, and I came to the conclusion, after a year and a half, that if I could help people do 4 things and improve those 4 areas, it would just greatly improve their life. And that's where the REAL comes from. The letter R, there are 4 things. The first one, the letter R, stands for relationships. And I said to myself, if I could help people really just have good people skills, it's just going to improve their life. And it's kind of like this. People won't really go along with you unless they can get along with you. And so I made a commitment that in my writing of books, and I've written 83 now, I made a commitment that I would help people learn how to get along with people. Stanford research says this: your success, my success, anybody's success in this profession, 87% of our success is people knowledge, and only 13% of our success is product knowledge. In other words, Stanford research basically says that your success and my success is going to be more determined by our ability to get along with people, add value to them, connect with them, than anything else in our life. And that is exactly what I've discovered. So I began to write books on how to be a people person and just books that would help people understand what I would call people skills, relationship rules like the golden rule: treat others as you would like to be treated. During the Enron scandal in America in 2001, my publisher, Time Warner, asked me to write a book on business ethics, and I told them I couldn't. They asked why. I said, because there's no such thing as business ethics. There's just ethics. And then they said, well, could you write a book on ethics? I said, I'm not sure. It's hard to write a book on ethics if there's no truth or absolutes, but let me give it a shot. And I did write one. And I wrote one based on the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated. And the eureka moment for me in writing that book was I found that in the business community, that if the business community began to embrace good values, that they would become more valuable. They become more valuable to themselves. They become more valuable to their customer. They become more valuable to the people in their office. And so my discovery was that values really help people help other people in a beautiful way. And caring for people and relationship values are just absolutely essential. I wrote a book several years ago called Winning with People, and one of my chapters and one of my people principles is what I call the elevator principle, which simply says some people lift you up, some people bring you down. And the question for all of us today is, what do I do? Am I an elevator that takes people to a higher level, or am I an elevator maybe with only one button on it with the letter B, which means basement, and I just take people down? Well, here's what I know about relationships and why it's so important in your life and my life. Each one of us right now, we're either a plus in people's lives or a minus. We're either an asset or a liability. We either lift people up, or, to be honest with you, we kind of bring them down. One of the things that I've concentrated on for several years now, and wanting to be good relationally with others, is a commitment that I made to intentionally add value to people. Now, I say the word intentionally because I think it's a key word. And what I mean by that is I think that we are born selfish. I know I was. And what that basically means is that I want somebody to do good things to me. And I get up in the morning and think, wow, I wonder if something good is going to happen to me. And we just naturally have kind of a selfish nature waiting for someone else to do something good for us. The reason that intentionally adding value is so important is that I naturally want people to add value to me. So I have to be very intentional if I want to add value to you. And so I began to ask myself, well, how do I become that plus in people's lives that really does add value to others around you? And I came to a system, a process in my life that really works for me. And it's a very simple one. And what's real beautiful is every one of you can do this. And it doesn't take much time, but it makes a big difference in people's lives. You see, every day there are 5 things I do that truly adds value to other people. First of all, every day I value people. That's the foundation of relationships, valuing the people that are around you. You see, if I don't value you as a person, I'm not going to add value to you. Why would I add value to a person that I don't value? So all of the positives of relationships begin with the fact that I just value you as a person. That's why I'm so delighted today to even be able to share with you for a few minutes in this topic of real success, because I value you as a person, and I believe you have greater potential. Even though already you are successful, I think you have potential to even be more successful. So it all begins with the fact that every day I value people. If I, as a leader, value people, I'll add value to them, no doubt about it. The second thing I do, I not only value you as a person, but number 2, every day, I think of ways to add value to you. If I'm already thinking of how I can add value to you, the odds increase that I'll think of a way to add value to you. So every day I value you, and every day I think of ways of adding value to you. And thirdly, when I'm with you, I look for ways to add value to you. In other words, we all know this, but let me just maybe take a moment and just emphasize it, underline it for us. When we look at people, we don't see them as they are, we see them as we are. And so when I come to be with you, if I'm looking for ways to add value to you, guess what? I'll find ways to do that. Why? Because I'm looking for those ways. Just as, to be honest with you, if I sat down with you and I wasn't thinking or looking at any way to add value to you, the odds would be high that I wouldn't add value to you at all. Why? It wasn't in my thoughts. I wasn't looking for that. There's something incredibly powerful about when you see your clients. You're looking for ways to not only help them, obviously, with your smile and your practice, but to help them, just to help add value to them. So you're looking for ways to, say the right thing, do the right thing that just would add value to them. So every day I value you. I think of ways to add value to you. I look for ways to add value to you. And every day I do things that add value to you. In other words, it's more than looking and seeing. It's doing. It's taking action. I think the most overrated words in the English language are good intentions. And I know a lot of people, they have good intentions, but they never transfer those over to good actions. And nobody ever was helped with good intentions. We're only helped when those intentions become actions. And so every day, I'm not only going to think of ways to add value to you and look for ways to add value to you, I am going to do things that add value to you. And number 5, every day, again, every day, I'm going to encourage you to add value to others. And that's what I'm doing right now. In your practice, I want to encourage you, not only help people with this transformational smile that you're going to do with their teeth, but just help people. Help people any way that you possibly can. And then encourage them to do the same for others. Here is what I know. To be successful, you and I want to have good relationships with others. In fact, I would go as far to say that as you look in your past, as I look behind in my past, honestly, the relationships that are positive in our lives are the highlights of our lives. So if you want to achieve and succeed well in any practice, remember relationships. Commit yourself to getting along well with people and connecting with them. Let's go to the letter E in the word real. That stands for equipping. To be highly successful, you have to equip other people. In fact, if it was just you and me, let's say you and I had the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation, okay? Just you and me. If I could sit down, I would ask you 2 questions that will greatly determine the success of your business. The first question I'd ask is very simple. What are you doing to develop yourself? What's your personal growth plan? The reason I ask that question is your people can only grow to the level that you grow. Sometimes as leaders, we keep our people from developing because we've not developed ourselves. It's true that people follow the leader. So I have to be able to go high if I want my people to go high. I have to be able to go far if I want my people to go far. So the first person I need to develop is myself. Not because I'm selfish, just because the better I grow and develop, the more I can enable others to do the same thing. So question number 1 is, what are you doing to develop yourself? And now you know what question number 2 is, what are you doing to develop others? That's all about equipping your staff. And the powerful thing about equipping is that when you begin to train and equip people, you compound all of your success. You compound your time because now others are helping you do things. You compound your influence because now others are having positive impact in people's life. You compound your finances because you have other people helping you work in the business, which creates more people to take care of and greater profits. I mean, compounding is a result of training and equipping other people. Now, I wish I had time today to really extensively talk to you about equipping others. But sometimes when I talk about this subject, people say, "Wow, I don't know if I'm qualified to do that. I don't even know if I don't even know if I know how to do that." So let me just very briefly, in the next minute and a half, give you my 5 equipping steps, steps that I take to equip other people. And step 1 is very simple. I do it. Before I ever train you, equip you, develop you, I have to do it. Why? Because people do what people see. Leadership is visual. Pretty much, people don't do what you say, they do what you do. So my credibility of equipping you is the fact that I do what I'm going to equip you to do very well myself. That gives me credibility and it gives me influence to now train and develop you. So step 1 is I do it. Step 2 is I do it and you are with me. You see, equipping depends upon proximity. Again, leadership is visual, and so if you're with me and you're getting to watch me, you're going to learn much quicker how to do something very well. So this is where we're together, and I'm visually demonstrating to you what I want you to learn how to do. Step 3 is now you do it, and I'm with you. Isn't it interesting? There comes a time when I literally, this is a water bottle, but there comes a time where I hand that baton off to you and you take it. And now all of a sudden, you're doing the work, but I'm still with you. I'm watching you. I'm coaching you. I'm tweaking you. Every time we're finished doing a project, whatever it is, you and I may sit down for 15 minutes and we may just kind of review what happened. And now I'm sharing with you maybe how you could even do it more effectively. But again, we're together, but now you're leading and I'm observing, coaching, and helping you. Step 4 is you do it. There comes a time you don't need to be with me. You know how to do it, and so you go. And that's always an exciting time for an equipper because now all of a sudden I have not only myself doing this job, but you're doing it too. So we've got 2. Now we're starting to add. We're starting to really kind of compound in a small way our success. Now, most equipping stops at level 4. When you can do it, what I've taught you how to do, it's kind of like, okay, I've done my job, and I go focus maybe on someone else to equip. But there's a 5th step, and I don't want you to miss it because this is the magic step in equipping people. If you practice step 5 in your offices, in your practices, you're going to greatly compound your success. You see, step 5 is you do it, and someone is with you. In other words, you're now equipping someone else. In fact, when I began to train and equip someone, before I ever start, I ask them if they're willing to train and equip someone after I do that for them. If they say yes, we start. If I see there's a hesitancy and they kind of just maybe aren't interested in training someone else, we don't even start. Why? I don't want my equipping to be a dead-end street. I want to equip you so you can equip others. And that's where true compounding begins. And really successful people, they get along with people really well. They're really good at relationships. And they train and develop others really, really well. Let's go to the A, the 3rd thing that we need to do to be a real success. And that A stands for attitude. Attitude isn't everything, but it's the main thing. In fact, it's so important in your life and in my life that it's what I call the difference maker. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. If you were hiring somebody in your practice and the 2 people you were looking at, they both had good experience, they both seemed to have the skill set, and you kind of were wondering, well, which one of them do I pick? They're very equal. But let's say one had a terrific attitude and the other one did not. Who are you going to hire? You're going to hire the person that has a good spirit, a good attitude. Now, all of a sudden, when all things are equal, attitude makes all the difference in the world. And I think all of us know that coming through COVID-19, our attitude, our positive life stance is going to be absolutely essential for us if we're truly going to overcome adversity such as what we have gone through in our life. And what's powerful about attitude is that it's a choice. You and I get to choose it. I can still remember many, many years ago, I was doing a conference, and my wife, Margaret, we've just been married now for 52 years, but she was with me at the conference, and we were having a Q&A time. And one of the people at the conference looked at Margaret, and they asked her, he said, does John make you happy? And when she asked that question, I thought, what? That's a good question. I think I'm a good husband. And then Margaret surprised me and everybody by looking right at the person that asked the question and said, no. She said, he doesn't make me happy. I mean, there was just like a pause and a gasp, and everybody kind of think, oh my gosh, Margaret just said John didn't make her happy. And I'm over there and I'm saying, hey, Margaret, honey, explain to them what you mean about I don't make you happy. She said, okay. And then she said, for the first 6 months of our marriage, that's exactly what I expected him to do. Make me happy. I was teaching school, and I would come home and I'll say, we have dinner together and we'll have a wonderful evening. And he might call me and say, honey, I've got another business issue I got to take care of, and I'm not going to be home until about 7. Go ahead and eat. I'll be there. Or maybe I'd have to grade papers and eat. She just said, I kept saying, it'll make me happy. It'll make me happy. And she said about 6 months in the marriage, she said, I realized it wasn't going well. And then she said, I came to the conclusion, the only person that can make me happy is me. And the moment that I choose happiness, I choose it. She said, then John has added immeasurably to my happiness. That was close. That was close. Now, what was Margaret saying? Very simple. It's a choice. Attitude is a choice. When I see a person that doesn't have a good attitude, honestly, I really don't feel sorry for them because they chose that. The attitude that you have right now, the attitude that I have right now, it's a personal choice. The good news is, if we want to, we can change it. Several years ago, I decided to develop what I call a positive life stance, and a positive life stance goes something like this. Life is filled with good and bad. That's a fact. And some of the good and some of the bad I cannot control. It's just life. And some of the good and some of the bad's going to find me. Trust me, it will. Good will find me, bad will find me. Now, here's where the difference begins to form. If I have a positive life stance about not only good but bad, both the good and the bad will get a little bit better. Just as if I have a negative life stance about the good and the bad will get a little worse. And so therefore, once I understand the power of the attitude, I choose a positive life stance. And I can promise you, with COVID-19 hopefully now behind us, look back at it and ask yourself the question, what kind of attitude did I have? Because I promise you, there are some people during that very adverse, difficult situation, they improved their life. And there were some people, their life just seemed to go south. It wasn't the fact that COVID-19 hit us, it was the fact that our attitude became the difference maker. You see, what happens to me doesn't have to determine what happens within me. I can't control everything that happens to me, but I can control my attitude, the way that I think, the thing that happens within me. Attitude, essential for success. Now let's just review for a moment before I give you the last part of success. Relationships. So important to your success. The ability to get along with people. Equipping. Honestly, it's the only way that you can compound your business, by training and equipping the other people around you so they can help you carry this load that you have. Attitude. how I think about myself, how I think about you, how I think about my clients, my employees, how I think about adversity like COVID-19 determines so much whether I grow from it or I don't. So the last thing I want to talk to you about, the letter L in the word L, relationships, equipping, attitude. And you've guessed it. You know what the L is all about. It's about leadership. I'm known as the leadership expert. I've written dozens and dozens of books on leadership. In fact, it's now a fact that I've written more material on leadership than any person who's ever lived in the history of the world. I live leadership. I love leadership. I teach leadership. And here's why. The reason I started training leaders is because in my 20s, I came to a very important conclusion, of which 50 years later, the conclusion I had as a young man is stronger today as an older man. Here's what I concluded 50 years ago. Everything rises and falls on leadership. That's a fact. Not some things, not most things, everything. It's true in the healthcare business, the business that you're in. It's true in government. It's true in religion. It's true in education. Everything rises and falls on leadership. In other words, leadership has the ability to make things better, or to be honest with you, bad leadership makes things worse. There's a rising with good leadership, and there's a falling with bad leadership. Let me close with this leadership thought. In my book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, the first law that you read about as you open the pages of that book is the law of the lid, L-I-D. And the law of the lid just simply says how well you lead determines how well you succeed. That's a fact. That's true in your business. That's true in my business. That's true in every person's life. So let me illustrate it visually. Let's say I'm an average leader. From a 1 to a 10, let's say I'm a 5, okay? And let's say this hand represents my leadership lid. This is the leadership skill level of John Maxwell. These are my leadership gifts, okay? This is my lid. This is how well I lead. It's a 5. It's not a 6. It's just an average. I'm a 5. If this is my leadership lid, and this hand represents my business will come under, but never go higher. Never go higher than my leadership lid. In other words, if my leadership is a 5, my business is going to be a 4. That's a fact. You say, but you know what? I'm very skilled in my work. You perhaps are. But your leadership lid is going to determine the size of your business. Now, often I'm having people ask me, and during Q&A, they'll say, John, are leaders born? And whenever they ask me that question, I always give them the same answer. Of course they are. Just think about that question. Every leader I know is born. They're not really asking the question, are leaders born? They're really asking, are there some people that they're born with leadership gifts and skills, and so they go to the front of the line, and there are people that are born without them, and they go to the back of the line. That's what they're really asking. Is there such a thing as a born leader? And there are leaders that have what I would call, there are people that are born that would have intuitive leadership gifts to them, just like some people are born with musical gifts. So it's possible you could be born with some gifts that would help you to become a good leader. But what I really know is that you can learn how to lead. That's a fact, because leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. And the moment people break down leadership as influence and ask themselves, how do I develop and gain influence in my life? To be honest with you, at that point, they're going to be very, very successful.
I love how John is introducing his thinking. John has a quote, and I love this that Jake, you included in my notes. John has a quote that says, leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. And when John's helping us with this loop, if you read the book 360-Degree Leader, which, by the way, we're going to include it in the show notes. We're going to give you a 15% discount on the book. But if you'll read the book, John is teaching this loop, Chris, for people like you and I have been working side by side. How do I gain influence with you and then set you free to go create influence for others? So how do I add value to you in a peer relationship? How do I gain influence, leadership with you as a peer? And then how do I empower you to go help others? And John gets really just fundamental in this lesson and gives us a real 7-step process to have this influence loop in a peer relationship. But you said this at the beginning, and I want you to start us off with this. You said, Mark, this is peer, this is 360, but I think this works in any kind of a leadership relationship.
Yeah. Let me start by saying this. Aren't you and I grateful that we're at a place and we work for a leader that develops stuff like this that's very simple?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be sitting here.
We wouldn't be.
Now, it's simple. The loop is simple. I love it. Lays it out. It's not easy to implement.
Right.
And as leaders, especially peer-to-peer, we get into a silo. We want to protect our territory. We want to protect our lead. We don't necessarily want to connect with our peers. And so this gives you a roadmap. This is a simple process, not easy to do as a leader. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and pull some things from you on how you've done this and what's easy and what's hard for you and application. But I think you're right. I think this is bigger than just peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
And John would agree with that. John would say, no, absolutely. This is a fundamental part of leading people.
Yeah.
And we say this around here quite a bit. We love what we get to do.
Yep.
Everybody deserves to be led well. We want to add value to leaders, but we love what we get to do. And more importantly, we love who we get to do it with.
Yeah.
And I think you can only say those type of statements, whether they're a peer or someone you work for or that works for you, if you truly understand this loop that John has laid out for us.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing just to kind of contextualize this before we dig in. You mentioned that we get in these silos. Peers get in silos.
Yeah.
I've got my little responsibilities. Hope you do well over there, Chris, but I've got my stuff I need to do. Hey, Jared, I hope you get all the content done, but I got my stuff to do. Yeah. And that's really a real deal to where we become ineffective, not for any other reason than we just get focused on what we need to do. So we don't even think about the peer.
Sure.
Because why would I spend time trying to lead a peer? They got their thing, I got my thing. There's another reason that we're not very good at this, and it's a competitive reason.
No doubt. That's
right?
exactly what I was thinking,
You've played ball at the senior level, at the highest level.
Yeah.
And there's in all of us a little bit of a competitive. I got to win. I want to be a little bit better. We right now in Maxwell Leadership, we are really focused on expanding our Spanish platform. And for the first time ever, last month, our Spanish team outsold our English team.
Yes.
Our English team is 10 years old. Our Spanish team is about 4 years old. Never been done in the last 48 months until last month.
That's awesome.
And I found myself as CEO going, how do I celebrate the first time ever one team has done better than the other team? Because sometimes when you compare, you end up making one team feel like that they're not doing very well and the other team feel like, hey, they don't have anything to do. They've reached the pinnacle. I think as peers, as we dig into this, Chris, I think we need to understand that competitiveness with peers rather than completing with peers is extremely a dangerous sport to play in a team environment, especially on a corporate team, because that competitiveness causes you to lose effectiveness. And I've heard John tell story after story of when he was a pastor and he was raising a lot of money and he didn't want to help another church raise money because why would he help another church? He was competing.
He wants it, yeah.
I think you really have to check. Now, your drive to succeed is one thing, but when you are a competitive person like you and I, and you're in a peer relationship, your competitor has to be yourself, not the person you're trying to influence.
That's right.
And so I just want to say that because silos inhibit our ability to influence at a peer level, but so does competitiveness.
Yeah.
And just keep that in check.
Yeah, and just two thoughts on that, and then we're going to dive into this loop. You challenge us as leaders in this organization to compare against what we have done in the past.
Right.
Not compare against what another business unit is doing. And I think that's healthy to do that, and you got to have that focus. Otherwise, to your point, everybody's got a little bit of competitiveness in them.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening, not only where you kind of had a little bit of angst of how do I talk about what we've done, in 4 years and finally the first time ever more than the English platform. Not only is that maybe a rub for the team, but then the leaders of those business units inside your organization, and then they are peers, go, well, you know what, I'm not going to share any more information. And what you end up doing is creating a subculture inside that organization.
Yeah.
So we got off on a little bit of tangent there, but I think that's good
I think it is
context
too.
for what we're talking about here with leaders and peers and all that stuff. Let me say this too. This is not just inside your organization. And Mark's going to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to ask you a couple questions around when you think about peer-to-peer, people go, oh, it's the peers inside my organization.
Right.
It's peers outside the organization.
right.
You have a lot of peers. Matter of fact, you have more peers now outside of the organization than you do inside the organization as the CEO.
Right.
So I want you to think about this loop and these principles that John has taught us today, that they apply outside of your organization as well, and know that. So here's what I want to do. You've led at all levels throughout our organization, and right before we went live here, I asked you, I said, let's talk a little bit about the ones that maybe they're a little bit harder for you. Maybe you stay a little bit too long in the loop, and then what just comes naturally for you, where you don't even think about it, and we're moving on, and you just naturally do it. And you so graciously said, yeah, let's talk about it. We'll air the dirty laundry of Mark's leadership style.
If we have time to air the dirty laundry. There's quite a bit of dirty laundry in here.
So let's talk about this, because I want our listeners to take these principles that John gave us, and we're just going to probably pick 2 or 3 of them, talk about them. But I want them to hear real life application from Mark's leadership style and what that looks like. So let's dive in. Tell the listeners and those that are the viewers that are joining us via YouTube, tell them a little about, when you look at this loop, what's the one that you really kind of, again, hardest, it may not be the right word, but where you just kind of maybe stay a little bit too long as you think about influencing your peers or people with inside your leadership?
Yeah, I love this exercise, and typically we just cut on the mics and we try to be really raw so it's very applicable. We did talk about this a little bit, and I paused for a minute, Chris, and I didn't tell you this before we started recording, but I'll tell you now, because you said air out dirty laundry. It was a toss-up between the one I'm going to share and the other one, which is caring. Now, you wouldn't have thought that because you and I agreed on what the one I stay at the longest, and I'll share that in just a moment. But here's the deal with caring. I am a relational person, but I'm a relational person with an agenda. Forgive me, everybody, for just admitting that, okay?
We just got real. Matter of fact, we're going to go a completely different direction, because now I'm going to interrogate Mark Cole and his leadership. But I love that. I love the vulnerability.
I'm a very relational
and you're like
person,
Pace, right?
But I have always naturally cared for a purpose.
Yeah.
The longer I've been around John Maxwell, the more I care for a purpose, because we're always intentional, always going. So I struggle with that, because now let's talk about who we're talking about. We're talking about peers.
Yeah.
So I love you. How's your mom and them? We're good. I don't really care about your business. I got an agenda over here. I've got to run my business.
Yeah.
And so I really paused. You'll remember when you asked me that question before we started recording, I paused because I went, would it be caring? Would I share that if it was caring? Do I want people to know that I care for an agenda? I went through all these mental calisthenics. I really do have to work to care about somebody else's agenda. I'm a relational person. I care about the agenda of the people that I'm leading, but guess why? So that I can help them be more effective, so we can do great things together. And so caring for a peer takes a discipline, even for a relational person. And for some of you that are relational like me, I just set you free because you admitted something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think you shared something that a lot of people think that don't talk about it. They don't share that.
Admit it. They don't talk about it. They don't even
especially
admit
not
it
for
to
millions
themselves.
of people that are listening to this podcast right now. But yeah, that's a true statement.
But let's talk about the one that you and I both agreed that is the one I stay the longest, and it's actually number 2. It's learning. And it's not that I don't love to learn. I can remember as a 4 or 5-year-old kid just reading. I love to learn. I love a lesson. A lesson learned is better than a buck put in the bank, in my opinion, because the return on a lesson is brilliant. But why would I answer that I stayed there the longest? It's because, one, I'm vetting the lesson. Again, you said air the dirty laundry. When I'm learning something from somebody, I'm vetting it from what I really believe. I'm a very strong-willed, very opinionated person. I bet you that's the first time you were aware of that, Chris. And what I realize is in learning a lesson, I really want to make sure it's a lesson or it's somebody else's opinion. I want to make sure if it will stand the test of something or if it's just a cute little idea.
Yeah.
And so I stay long with a lesson because when I determine that it is a lesson, I want it to drive the behaviors and the beliefs deep within me. And so lessons and learning is extraordinarily important to me because as I discover things, lessons, things that I learn along the way, I really expect a return for them. So I stay partly because it's hard, it's difficult to learn. I stay also because I'm vetting, am I really learning? But I also stay because when I am learning, I want a great return off of whatever that lesson is that I'm learning.
So let me interrupt you for a second. So when we take this learning, because you are an avid learner, and we tie it to your peers, and we tie it to learning about them, learning what they do, learning their skill set. I'm not going to say that you are you challenge what they think, but you want it to stand the test of time. You want, from an integrity standpoint, for it to be lived out in that individual. You want to learn more about them and see that fleshed out. And that's what takes you the longest in regards to learning and connecting with people, because you do the same thing with concepts and principles that you would do with people.
I do. In fact, I think that when we talk about learning, and you're talking about in any kind of a setting, whether it's from a book, from a person, that how you receive it is what the lesson is all about. So let me tell you, I think when I learn something about you, Chris, I can discover something about you and appreciate that. So I really learned it. But I think when you give me insight into you, it's one of the most important things that you could ever give me because I should do something with that lesson, that whether it's from a teacher, whether it's from a boss, somebody above us, whether it's from a book, when somebody gives you the gift of insight, then it should be treated as something that deepens your ability to be effective. So when you take a moment and you share something about you, I'm learning about you as my peer. That is a great gift of a lesson that as I learn about you, it should change behavior and change perceptions within me.
That's good.
Your lessons, what I learn about you, should be applied within me so that we can do something greater together. So in this context of learning about another human being, a person beside you, I find it incredibly incredibly important that we take this as if it's a lesson in algebra in
That's good.
Sixth grade.
Yeah.
I take that as a gift that will make me more effective. Again, why are we doing this? This is a leadership loop.
That's right.
This is not a relationship loop. If it's a relationship loop, tell me about your mom and them. Tell me about something that you like. Oh, that's good. Let me celebrate it. No. This is a leadership loop. I'm learning from you so I can be more effective with you.
I have seen you, as you were talking about that, I've seen you do that with different people in our organization so that they want to follow you, so that they want to be a part of the bigger picture, the mission, the organization that we are doing. And I think so many people, we talk about this in different leadership things, and you see this all the time, where they get an opportunity to be a part of an organization, a part of a team, and have a peer, and they forget all about the caring. They forget all about the learning. And as John mentioned, a lot of people go directly to number 6 in the loop, which is leading, and they're missing the foundation of influencing and connecting with people.
Let me give you one example, okay?
Yeah.
You don't have a clue where I'm going, but it's all about you, okay? This is all, again, please contextualize, because I did spend a good bit of time talking about lessons that I learned, but this is a leadership loop, not a relationship loop. Now watch. Just recently, you gave my wife an experience that I would have never thought of. You listened to her about a year ago talk with your wife about something that she wanted to do, And when the opportunity came up, you brought it up to Stephanie, which I guess is a peer. It's definitely a relationship. You don't have a working relationship with Stephanie, but you both were on the same page trying to influence the call of where we're going. You took time, just happened. You took time by reminding her what you heard her say before and how you have been diligently working on giving her an experience she could not have gotten by herself. Last night, and in multiple nights since, what she has done is she has shared with me the significance, not of what the experience is going to be, of how that linked back to what you learned about her in a conversation that was irrelevant to a relational thing. Oh, it was good to know Stephanie had this ambition, this bucket list. That's all wonderful. No. You have a leadership hat on, and you learned a lesson and applied it. Don't miss that is all relational. Got it. But it was leadership, too. There is a great sense of leadership in that example.
It's good. It's a good example. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get back to the loop now. Let's move on. And I want to talk a little bit about, from your leadership perspective and how you lead, what comes easiest to you. And we were both in agreement on this one as well. Talk a little bit about which one it is, and then let's unpack it a little bit.
Yeah, so it's verbalizing.
Yeah.
And this was an easy one. I'm a words of affirmation person. I want words of affirmation. I give words of affirmation. I believe words of affirmation. I see that good, that highlightable item in another human being. And so whether it's peers, whether it's people, I love how you contextualize this at the beginning of this podcast. For us, we all have peers outside of our industry, outside of the walls of our organization. And it just comes easy for me to find, highlight. I've been saying lately, it's easy for me to note something celebratable in a person's life, and it's easy for me to notate it.
Yeah.
I love to note it. I love to see powerful things in another person. I love just as much to notate it. Tell them I noticed it. That's just, to me, that really does come easy, and specifically in building a leadership influence loop.
And you've challenged us as a team before, and I was smiling when you said the note versus notate, because you challenged us and you said, hey, watch what's going on in your team. Watch what's going on with your peers. Make a note of it, but then I want you to notate it, and it's been powerful because you've been able – now with text and it's so easy to notate to people what you have been able to see and observe in their leadership and verbalize that to them. So what does that do? Whether they're a peer or whatever, it raises your influence. That's right. It raises your connection, and everybody wins. The organization wins, you win, they win, everybody wins across that. Now, with this, we've also talked a little bit about when one of these areas in this loop come very easy to you as a leader, there's a blind spot to that. There is hey, maybe I do this too much. Maybe and I'm smiling at marketing, right? Like it just comes so naturally and it oozes out of you as a leader that you don't want it to come across to where it's not authentic in the communication and connection with them. Talk a little bit about that from your leadership, what things you've learned on how to control that. Maybe you want to I want to notate that. But then you've held back, and then maybe other times where you've reached out to people that you're not even that close to, but are a peer in the leadership world. And you've done it. It's had a great impact. Just talk about some of those examples.
Yeah, so about 14 years ago, maybe 15 now, I can remember I could give her name. I can go back to the conversation. A friend of mine that was not under my leadership but was on the same team came to me and said, this person over here does not like you. I thought we had a great relationship. And, I struggled with people pleasing all of my life. John helped me go from pleasing people to leading people. And it bothered me so bad. And I said, why? And they said, because they think you're fake. And I went, I'm fake? And they said, yeah, you compliment people too much. You verbalize affirmation way too much. And I went, how do you verbalize affirmation too much? I think the world can't get enough affirmation. I mean, give me some more. Give me some.
If they're breathing.
Yes, if they're breathing, they need affirmation, right? It really was perplexing to me. And I sat down with the individual. I said, can you help me understand how I compliment too much? And she said to me there is no way you can believe that much good about another human being. And I worked through that. I really do. And then she said, here's the really straw that broke the camel back. I heard you telling one person the same thing you had told somebody else the day before. And she says, you don't give enough specificity with your affirmation when you verbalize.
That's good.
Now, the lesson for me was not I'm verbalizing too much. She had some wounds in her life to where somebody had buttered her up and then behind her back sliced her down. I didn't know that. I'm not responsible for that with her. I didn't learn to stop verbalizing. Here's what I did learn. Verbalize with specifics.
Love it.
Be very clear when you're verbalizing. I love you. You're awesome. Way to go. You're a team player. All of that's wonderful, but you're a team player because the other day I saw you put aside your agenda for someone else's agenda. Go be specific in verbalizing, or you will be, you really will diminish your intent in verbalizing affirmation.
Yeah, and when it's a natural gift, and it's a gift that you have as a leader, as an individual, like it is for Mark, that's the blind spot. That's what we've got to be aware of on the other side of that. And so it may not be verbalizing for you. It may be somewhere else on the loop, but that's an application. That's something that we want you to be aware of through Mark's leadership that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about this, and then I'm going to throw you a little curveball, and we're going to talk about one more, is that I have seen you I've seen your growth in this, and I've seen you a lot lately where not only are you verbalizing with specifics, but you're tying it to a value of the organization. So think about this, right? We have peers inside our organization, and when you verbalize this with them in front of a team, or maybe even one-on-one, you tie it back to, hey, I saw this, we exceed expectations. Now let me tell you what so-and-so did.
Yeah.
And so not only are you specific on the value that you want to verbalize and lift up in the culture of our organization as a leader, but then you're specific with the example, and I can think of several of them. And so I would just encourage you not only to be specific, as Mark talked about, but then tie it to the value that's important to you or the organization.
Yeah.
All right, the last one I want to talk about, this comes, I've seen you do this and from a leadership standpoint where John talks about, and this is an infinite loop, right? We know that this is going to be ongoing, where he says, hey, the last one is succeeding. And what I love about this, notice we didn't even talk about leading, number 6 today, right? Like you do all these other things, you're going to be able to lead. Where he says, man, we want to win with people.
Yeah.
We want to do this with people. And you want to do it with your peers. You want to do it with those that are on your team. Talk about the importance of this to you as a leader of, man, we're not doing something alone. And as we grow our influence, we've got to be paying attention to what's going on with our peers, because they're leading other units, and rising tide raises all boats, and we want to win together. Talk about your passion as a leader to do that with people, with leaders, and not to succeed on your own.
I love John's definition of success. We're talking about succeeding. I love his definition of success, where he says success is when those that know you the most think the most of you. And I think so many times we want to be seen as a world leader or as an influencer. We want people that have to say we're good people because we sign their checks. We spend more time in wanting people that get benefit by saying we're successful to get us to say that we're successful. Or we spend so much time getting someone that can promote us to more success to see us as successful. What I love about succeeding in this loop is you're succeeding with people that don't have to say you're successful, and you're succeeding with people that you don't try to impress so
That's
that
right.
they will promote you.
That's right.
This is success with people that has no vested ability to promote you or to help you succeed. And when you can succeed with your peers, you have real success.
Yeah.
You have a success because those that know you the most, those that people that think like you, they're the people that have the same amount of responsibility or not. They're the same people that have the same frustration of being the second man, third man, 10th man down the pole. They have all the same challenges, and they watch you from their vantage point, and they go, wow, that guy is successful.
Yeah.
See, in our organization anymore, Chris, you know this. In our organization anymore, and I've had to hire even recently some outside talent that I just needed to help me get to a certain level in the organization. When I promote internally or even somebody from the outside in and give another promotion, it is extremely important to me that their peers demand their promotion before I, as their, forgive this word, superior, promotes them.
Yeah.
And when peers are saying that person needs to be promoted, you have been successful at peer-to-peer leadership.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I've seen not only you do that with individual leaders, but then also different business units inside our organization. And there are leaders that are peers inside your world, whatever that might look like. We've talked about it a couple of different ways, to where you could kind of check out, and it's not a celebration of as it should be, because you're worried about competing and you're not winning with people. And what I love about this, the example I was thinking, and I'm going to throw it to you to close up this session today on the Leadership Loop, is I was thinking about our nonprofit and the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation and George Hoskins, who's doing an incredible job leading over there.
Yep.
And while the other business units are for profit, that at times they're succeeding and doing incredible work, impacting people all around the world. And yet we could just sit over there. He's a peer of mine, right? And he works directly and reports directly to you, but we could just sit over there and say, man, you're doing a good job, whatever.
Yeah.
And be like, man, I wish my numbers were that good. But instead, we are celebrating, and we want to help complete him, and how can we help him, and all those different things. And so I think it's really encouraging to make sure. And we started off by talking about this silos, and we talked about subcultures, that as leaders, we get it. You're competitive, and you're on a career path, and you're on this track. But man, I want you just to slow down a little bit and think about the peers that are inside your life, and some of the examples that Mark, you shared with us, and how do you do a better job of influencing and connecting with those by applying the principles that John gave us in this leadership loop. You and I, we have a bent towards this, and John talks about we have to develop a relationship with those that we equip. And I think this is critical. This is the foundation, I think, to all influence. We call it, John calls it level 2, and the 5 levels of leadership that increase your influence by developing relationships. You cannot equip somebody, and you cannot pull the best out of them and have them lead at higher levels unless you build a relationship with them. Yep. Which is why, leaders, you have to be very careful, depending on the size of your organization, how many direct reports you do have.
Right.
Because everything we're talking about here today, you can't do 7, 8, 9, 10 times your direct report. So be careful about that. Talk about you and how you lead and equip people by starting, because I know you do this so well, with the foundation of building a relationship with people, and why that's so important.
Yeah, and thank you for giving me a lot of kudos on it, because I do believe that it is a strength of mine. I today, in admitting that, and hopefully not coming across as cocky or got all of that together, I must also admit that while it's a strength of mine, I'm not so sure it's a discipline of mine right now. And I believe that if you find something that you're very good at, you got to have the strength and recognize it's a strength, but you've got to have the discipline to keep it present when situations, responsibilities begin to shift around you. I was reminded of that recently. I was invited to stand in with somebody that used to work on our team, Chris, and I got to be in his wedding. And I went out with one of our teammates that also was in the wedding. And I got to spend, it was an hour and a half from our lodging to the event venue, which is where the rehearsal and the wedding was. So it was about 6.5 hours worth of drive time. And in this 6.5 hours of time, I had one of our leaders on our leadership team in the room, or in the car with me. And what occurred to me as I was on the plane coming home from that experience, it occurred to me how little I had been spending in cultivating that relationship. Now, was the relationship fine? Did we pick it right up where we left it the last time we went to play golf or ski or whatever we have done together recently? Absolutely we did, because of years and years and years of operating in my strengths. But here's what I discovered. You can have the strength, but not the discipline. And without both of them,
That's good.
you will not be effective in equipping
That's good.
without both the strength and the discipline to stay in that strength. And thank you for complimenting me. I do think I'm pretty good at that. How long have you and your wife and me and my wife been trying to get on the calendar for a dinner? Don't answer the question. It's been a long time, listeners. It's been a long time. But that's really important because you and I both want to invite our better halves,
Yes.
let's be really clear
Yes.
if that's the case,
Yeah.
into what we do on a daily basis because you and I both travel a lot. And yet today, as I'm telling this, I have the strength to do that and sit down with you and Sarah and me, you and Stephanie and Sarah would have a brilliant time. But do I have the discipline? And that's the question on this. You may have the strength or not, but you better have the discipline, whether you have the strength or not, to keep it present in your leadership.
Yeah, and listen, leaders, Mark brings up a really good point here. The discipline part of this is leaders, we default to saying, I don't have time to do that. I can't put that on my calendar. And so not only do you have to be intentional and disciplined about it, but you be creative about it. You are already making trips. You are already in meetings. You're already going to lunches. Mark just used a great example of he was intentional. It may have been unintentional, but he used the time of this car ride as intentionality to be able to help and equip, invest in, and build a relationship to a deeper level with one of our key leaders. So think about it creatively, because I know everybody's answer is, I don't have time to do that. Figure out time to do it because it's key. All right, now listen, I'm going to throw it to you to close up, but I want to give you one last statement to let you react to. I deal with this. I know a lot of leaders probably deal with this as well. We have to. We have a little campaign around here called Free Mark, okay? Yeah. And he'll talk a little bit about this. But we have to, as leaders, let go of our desire to have direct control over situations inside our organization. John has taught us if someone can do something 80% as good as we have, give it to them. It'll create a natural mentoring, equipping conversation, and then they're probably going to be able to do it better than you. Mm-hmm. As you wrap up for us, just react to that comment about us wanting to, especially with your change in leadership and owning the Maxwell leadership and the shift that you and John are making in your relationship of having some key decisions and key part of, our P&Ls and different things that you have to relinquish control of to get above all of that, to continue to equip and develop people and get out of the weeds of it.
Okay, everyone, here is John Maxwell.
Let me give you 5 signs of a solid relationship. How do you know when the relationship is what it should be? This works in the family life. This works if you're on a team, in a company, organization. Okay, number 1, the first sign of a solid relationship is mutual enjoyment. In other words, both people can say, I like this relationship. It's not one-sided. These are the people who enjoy being together simply because we enjoy being with them. This is a great phrase. What we do together is not as important as what we are together. Now, that's a great understanding of the mutual enjoyment. And I understand this. My wife, Margaret, and I have this kind of relationship. And I'm sure most of you do. But what that really means is when I have some time, if Margaret has to do errands, I just go run around the car and do errands with her and just enjoy. It's not the errands. It's just the being together. That's the enjoyable part. That's what I'm talking about mutual enjoyment. The second sign of a solid relationship is respect. There's a respect involved in it. There's a great statement on respect in your notes. You can't make another person feel important if you secretly feel that he or she is a nobody. The third sign of a solid relationship is shared experiences. It is possible to love a human being if you don't know them too long. We've all been there before. I think I love them. I've only known them for a week. That's it. I can handle that. Within a month, you start reconsidering. Chuck Swindoll says that in the Marines, he was taught that you should dig a hole big enough for 2 when preparing for combat. There's nothing quite like fighting a battle all alone. There's something strengthening about having a buddy with you that keeps you from panic. We all need someone to lean on. We all need another person to show support to us. Every one of us in this room and all of the listeners hopefully have this kind of relationship with somebody. Now, you don't need this kind of relationship with a lot of people. In fact, I have come to the conclusion that all anybody can handle on this level are about a half a dozen friends. It gets much more than that, and it gets difficult. You can have a lot of friends, but I mean, on this level, probably about a half a dozen is about all that I can give the time to and handle in my own life. But every one of us know what it's like to have a person that we share experiences with and that we just absolutely look back and enjoy greatly. Lee Iacocca one time asked legendary football coach Vince Lombardi what it took to make a winning team. This is in his book, Iacocca. He said, there are a lot of coaches with good ball clubs who know the fundamentals and have plenty of discipline, but they still don't win the games. Then you come to the third ingredient. If you're going to play together as a team, you've got to care for one another. Each player has to be thinking about the next guy and saying to himself, if I don't block that man, Paul's going to get his legs broken. I have to do my job well in order that he can do his. He said the difference between mediocrity and greatness, Lombardi said that night, is the feeling that these guys have for each other. After the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl, Bill Belichick, I saw him in an interview, they asked him, do you think you can repeat as Super Bowl champion? And it surprised me. His answer said it'll be very difficult, which we know is very difficult. That didn't surprise me. He said because with free agency and the way the teams are today, 25 to 30% of the team that was here for this Super Bowl will not be here next year. And he said it's hard to build a repeat champion team when you have to keep rebuilding and have to keep building relationships. He said these guys have been long enough together to really care for each other. Well, that's part of this solid relationship level. So solid relationships are based on mutual enjoyment, respect, shared experiences. The fourth area that I think that solid relationships are built on is on reciprocity. Let me spell that. RECIPROCITY. And let me just talk to you about reciprocity for just a moment. For alliances to work, each ally must do a great deal for the other party, repeatedly, consistently over a long period of time. Reciprocity requires that the relationship is not one-sided. Because there are four kinds of people in your life: those who add, subtract, divide, and multiply, and every relationship will affect you for good or for bad. Those who will not increase you inevitably will decrease you. Okay. And each weakness, I love this statement, each relationship nurtures a strength or weakness within you. So the reciprocity rule of human behavior is this: over time, people come to share reciprocally similar attitudes toward each other. That's exactly what happens. We come to common ground. Number 5, one more thing on solid ground, is trust. When you have a relationship built and based on solid ground, there's a tremendous amount of trust. Warren Bennis claims that trust is one of the 6 basic ingredients of leadership. Integrity is the basis of trust, which is not so much an ingredient of leadership as it is a product. It is the one quality that cannot be acquired but must be earned. It's given by co-workers and followers, and without it, the leader cannot function. Trust is the foundation upon which relationships in every setting are built. One more quote. Michael Winston, Motorola, has rightly said, effective leaders ensure that people feel strong and capable. In every major survey on practices of effective leaders, trust in the leader is essential if other people are going to follow that person over time. People must experience the leader is believable, credible, and trustworthy. One of the ways trust is developed, whether in the leader or in any other person, is through consistency in behavior. Trust is also established when words and actions match. Relationships are the glue that holds the team together.
Well, today's topic is, can leaders have too much transparency? Where are we going today? What are you thinking here?
Well, I've been in some conversations, since we had Tim Elmore on the podcast about generational, the new kind of diversity, generational diversity. I've been talking with leaders and on our coaching and facilitation, and the question comes up around how younger generations tend to require the leaders to share more. Actually, if you don't share, the younger generations will share it for you.
Yeah.
They want to hear more from you. And I get the question, and how transparent should I be as a leader? Are there things I should share, obviously, but are there things I shouldn't share? And I think it comes down a little bit to some security in a leader and knowing their position, knowing their role, and knowing their team. But I thought it was an interesting topic, and I've got a couple of examples we may go through. But why don't you start by how do you see transparency? What's the definition you'd go by, and how would you define it for a leader?
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this to our listeners. This is so relevant that you don't even know this. I didn't share this with you.
You weren't transparent with me.
Yeah, I was not, right before we got ready to start. 2 nights ago, I was on a phone call with a leader inside our organization who is leading a younger generation teams, couple different generations. There's diversity there on the team of that leader. And the question was really around, in essence, how transparent can I be with my team? As leaders, all the times, we know more than our teams do at times, because you're in meetings where you're brainstorming and solving problems at a higher level. And the conversation went around of, I feel like at times I'm not being integrous, if I could say that, because of the fact that I'm not sharing potentially everything. And we had a really good conversation about timing of sharing information and what you share, what you can't share. And sometimes that's part of a leader's role, and you just kind of have to adjust to that.
Just hate to interrupt you, but the timing is,
yes.
Don't let that drop. We can continue, but when we were talking about how to and when to, timing is critical.
It is.
I think it's one of the linchpins of really transparent communication.
Yeah, totally agree. So I love that we're going to talk about this, because I just had a real conversation with a team member less than 48 hours ago. So back to transparency, to your question, let's define it, right? So as we talk about this, if you become transparent, there's no doubt that leads to a lot of openness, a lot of honesty inside your organization. And I think when you keep your team in the loop and you share information, again, the right time, and what you can share with them, that no doubt shows transparency. And it does lead to that openness and the honesty with the team. There is, back to my illustration, there is a fine line between what not only peer-to-peer you're sharing, but leader to direct report, or even maybe sometimes the other way around, direct report to its leader, where the fine line goes between being open and honest and maybe oversharing. And so it is this delicate balance. And as you started with, the multi-level of generations inside organizations, they all receive information a different way. They all share information a different way. And so this is something we got to talk about.
And as I heard this comment, I thought, from a baby boomer generation, which I am in, they think we would kind of, keep a stiff upper lip and just, keep your head down and don't say a whole lot.
Right.
Whereas, the different, as you come younger and younger, they just expect this openness of, there are no secrets almost.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be I love the fine line. And I know it feels risky sometimes when a leader starts to talk. I've had this myself when I know some things are going on in the organization. There are maybe even rumors going on about what's going on in the organization. How much do I share? When do I share? But people are looking to me to share, and it feels risky. But is it? You ask yourself, is it worth it? And I'll give you my opinion, a point of view on what I think, why you need to be more transparent. But I'd love to hear your thought, because you're in the middle of that. Is the level of we talk about an inclusive leadership, making people feel like they belong here, like they're an insider, like they're valued and it's safe. We can talk, that sort of thing. I think this transparency idea that really leads to inclusive leadership. I don't want people feeling like you're only on a need-to-know basis, and I'll let you know when you need to know. No. Can I? How much can I share? How much can I include you in even the thinking about what we're doing on in the organization and that sort of thing? But there is risk, but is there reward? How do you see that?
I absolutely think there's a reward. I think when I call it the team or the organization's rallying cry. What I mean by that, whether it's good or it's status quo, or maybe it's not good, the team is going to rally around what you share with them and how open and transparent you are with them. So as we talk about maybe even some areas that you can become or start becoming more transparent, here's a couple things for you. So how is the business doing? Like, really? You're a part of our weekly meetings. All the numbers are out on the table. Right. And I remember I had someone that was on my team for just a couple of weeks, and they're like you share, like Like all the numbers, like the phone calls and the revenue and the all the yes, everything, right? I want the team to be aware of kind of where we are and how are we doing as a team and as a business.
I was added that. I just hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you do. And I'm not. There's no need for me to know on those meetings about those salespeople, their weekly metrics on, because you hold them to the activity is important. So I just wrote on that, by the way, activity, not results. Just that you're measuring this, but you let us all hear that.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, wow, I'm even hearing what they're accountable for to you. And so it really opens it up to say, if I ever feel like you're only holding me accountable for, no, I actually can see
the whole team.
Everybody's numbers are on the table.
And everybody has different KPIs,
Right.
and I'm held accountable as a leader to different KPIs. And so we talk about that. This is a great one that you put in here. So why are we doing that change? Really? Like, because change is never fun.
I added the word really.
Oh man, like change is never fun. And that's when you get kind of the most pushback from your team. Here's another one for you. What are the biggest challenges we're going to face in the coming year from your perspective? Like, really share that. What is? And I've started sharing this with our team. Like,
this is where I got that one.
We're in a from an economic standpoint in the U.S. where inflation and some other things we're dealing with, and some businesses already in Q4 are saying, "Hey, we're just going to wait a little bit." And I'm sharing that. I see it, I read about it, and I share it and ask my team to be very transparent as well. Here's the deal: as a leader, if you don't go first and you aren't transparent, those that are closest to the customer, that are closest, the boots on the ground,
Right.
why would they be transparent with you? And if you want to more effectively lead your business and your team, then you need them to be transparent with you. And so you say this all the time, leaders go first. Right. So we need to make sure that as leaders that we're doing that.
Yeah, it's not only an engagement builder, but it's a trust builder that we are on the same page. And I think, I hear this on coaching calls a lot about what's 2023 and 2024 going to look like. If you watch the news for more than about 60 seconds, you realize there's a lot going on, and there's some negative forecasts, there's some medium forecasts. Haven't heard many positive forecasts, but people are. If your people they know what's going on, and so they're looking for you to lead. Yeah. They're looking for you to share, and you say, "Well, I don't have all the answers." Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.